Okay, I'll go ahead and start the webinar and we'll give ourselves a couple of seconds.
Let me know when it's all set.
Okay, looks like we're ready to go.
Okay.
So this is the January 25th, 2021 regular board meeting for the District 65 Board of Education.
Due to the governor's executive order suspending certain Open Meetings Act requirements in order to comply with the state of emergency, the District 65 Board of Education will be conducting virtual board and committee meetings.
Great, I'll take roll call. It is 7:07 p.m. Hernandez.
Here.
Lindsay Ryan.
Here.
Mendoza.
Here.
Cartha.
Here.
Halpern.
Present.
Kim.
Here.
Tanya Vudi.
Here. Biz, you get the next motion.
I do. I'm sorry. I move that the Board of Education approve tonight's meeting agenda as presented.
Second.
Hernandez.
Yes.
Lindsay Ryan.
Yes.
Mendoza.
Yes.
Cartha.
Yes.
Halpern.
Yes.
Kim.
Yes.
Tanya Vudi.
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0.
All right. And so that moves us on to our district update with our high five.
All right. So good evening. In the tradition of celebrating hard work and exceptional performance, I am pleased that in this new year, we are able to continue recognizing our incredible D65 team for their efforts as part of our high five. Celebrating excellence in District 65 Staff Recognition Program. The High Five Staff Recognition Program provides us with a unique opportunity to publicly acknowledge the very hardworking members of our team and to engage our community in the important work happening in virtual and very soon in-person classroom schools. That's a hand clap, everyone. I would like to thank Byline Bank for their sponsorship of the program again this school year. This allows us to generously recognize our incredible team members while keeping the program at no cost to the district or taxpayers. With their sponsorship, each recipient will receive a $100 gift card and a frame recognition certificate. As a reminder, the nomination form is still open. All members of our community, staff, students, and parents are invited to submit a nomination via our online form located in district65.net High Five. In our Fast Five community newsletter is where it's posted, I'm sorry. Additionally, as we will have a joint board meeting in February, 4 D65 staff members will be selected to be honored for the month of March. So please feel free to double up on your nominations. For the month of January, 2 amazing D65 employees are being highlighted. Tonight, we have the pleasure of virtually welcoming Maria and honoring Matthew, who unfortunately could not attend this evening's event. I will now share a little bit more about each of our nominees and we'll do a virtual round of applause at the end. This person that we're recognizing tonight, the first one, is very special to me. This is my right hand, and this is for Maria Valenzuela. Maria actually serves as my executive assistant and served the D65 community for 27 years. Maria was nominated by fellow District 65 staff member, Sarah Salas, who shared that Maria has served the district for more than 25 years. She has had a positive effect on her colleagues by stepping in to help when it's needed. Her dedication is evident in her willingness to go the extra mile to support the district. She is a real team player, and I can vouch for that. Maria, I can wholeheartedly say that everything that Sarah has shared is beyond a shadow of a doubt true. I want to thank you for all of the help that you have offered me daily, from managing my ever-growing and evolving schedule to keeping keen eyes on multiple tasks and assignments to ensure that I and our community do not skip a beat. Maria, you are an exceptional colleague and a phenomenal executive assistant. Thank you for your commitment to District 65 and for supporting your peers. Next, we will highlight Mr. Matthew Evans, special education teacher at Rice Education Center. As I shared earlier, unfortunately, he could not attend tonight's celebration. However, hopefully, he will view the recording of tonight's meeting and hear all the wonderful things that we have to share. Mr. Evans has been a part of D65 family for 5 years and was nominated by his colleague, fellow Rice special education teacher, Janet Wright. Janet shared that Matt Evans is a teacher of high caliber. He is open, friendly, humble, and helpful to all colleagues and students. Mr. Evans is never too busy to share his technological expertise with everyone. He is creative in scheduling and devising documents that are useful to all teachers. Mr. Evans is an excellent classroom teacher and provides a model for structure, lesson planning, and delivery of instruction. He has a wonderful, kind way with students who are having a rough day, and is often seen listening to students and offering counsel in his quiet, calming voice. I highly recommend Matt Evans for recognition of his role in District 65. Thank you, Mr. Evans. Your high five level professionalism is not only reflective in the way in which you meet your students' need and offer guidance to your peers, but that same level of professionalism is a standard that I hope all of our staff members strive to emulate across District 65. My favorite part of the evening is this one. It's time for some virtual high fives on a job well done. Your certificates will be sent to your buildings when you return in person, and your gift card will be sent electronically. Let's give some electronic and virtual high fives.
Oh, Maria.
Thank you.
On behalf of the school board and our entire leadership team, we want to thank you. Thank you for always putting the needs of your students and families first. Can I get a round of applause for these incredible individuals? Does anyone have anything that they would like to share?
I would just like to say a personal thank you. It's lovely to be able to personally extend that gratitude and appreciation to you, Maria. And Matt, I hope you receive our virtual appreciation and acknowledgement as well. I want to note that in both nominations, the mention of trust and collaboration and ability to rely on one another, which I think if, COVID-19 has taught us nothing else, it's the intangible value that we offer to one another in community. And to be able to sustain that while we're remote and still let our team members know that we care and that we're here to help is an incredible virtue. And so thank you so much. I'm glad that we have the opportunity to celebrate y'all.
Thank you. Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to be here. And because I just wanted to share this. I didn't have to, but there's a family in need who will be really happy to have the gift card. So thank you so much for helping me.
Thank you, Maria. You're a beautiful soul. And thank you for joining us this evening. Matt, if you are watching a recording of this meeting, we thank you as well. Thank you. I would also like to take this time to kind of just share with the community and with our staff and with our board. We have an agreement with our wonderful union with DEC That's amazing. It was over 20 bargaining sessions. I want to say more like 23 to be exact. That the union deck has really worked hard. The teachers were in there working with us to make sure that we can come to an agreement with a beautiful plan to get our staff and most importantly our students back in school safely. Um, Again, thank you for that, for everyone, from the team on our side who was part of bargaining, and also for the deck members. It was grueling and tiresome, but together they stayed. It wasn't always an easy process, but they grinded it out and came up with a really good plan. I would also like to say some of the things that is happening that's really our district, we have favor. I'll use some of Dr. Green's language. Um, on Monday, on this past Monday, we received a call from Amita Health to get our staff vaccinated. So just last week, we started with vaccines for staff for the first dose, with an anticipation of getting so many staff members vaccinated every week until everyone who chooses, who's returning to be vaccinated. And then for those who cannot return, we have plans to get them vaccinated as well. So that is really an honor, and we're excited, and we thank Amita Health, St. Francis, for coming through for us in the clutch. That's extremely important. And then I would also like to say, this may not be well known, but we are also providing childcare for some of our staff who reason why they couldn't return was because they had childcare concerns. So we've worked with the YMCA, and Beatrice Davis has been working with them, and they have a really good plan to make sure that we can provide childcare for our staff who want to return but had those issues receiving childcare. Our unions, our teachers, our staff, our educators, we thank you and we love you for your support and commitment to really making this a really great opportunity. And then finally, I would like to thank our medical advisory group. There are quite a few individuals on that team, but they have come through with information and knowledge that is really giving me the confidence to say, yes, we'll open on February 16th. And I thank each and every one of them. Their names can be found on our website, and hopefully we will be able to you'll get a chance to meet them in some of the forums that we have coming up this week with our staff and with our community. Again, I really can't say anything better than the information that February 16th, we do plan on returning. And because of our teachers, we're able to do that. And I hope families and the community really respects and appreciates the work that everyone has put in for this. So thank you.
Thank you for those superintendent comments. Do we have any board comments this evening? Yeah, Rebecca?
Yes, so I just, that's all great, wonderful news. Thank you, Dr. Horton, for sharing that news. I would like to take a moment, however, to express my condolences to our community on the passing of our educator, La Señora Torres from Washington, who lost her life tragically. And not only that, I wanted to just take a moment to express my condolence to all of our community members who have lost somebody. We've lost a total of 104 of our community members in these last 10 months. And I just wanted to take a moment, and some of those members are our parents, our relatives. And so I just wanted to take a moment to express my sincere condolences to those who have lost somebody.
Thank you. I think Joey and then Sergio.
Thank you, Anya. I also wanted to echo Dr. Horton's thanks to the Medical Advisory Board. I got to join them for a couple of sessions where they just provided a lot of confidence to the district's plan, to a lot of the work that had been done in preparing the buildings for whether it's the air filters or prepping the common spaces so that children can come and be successful and safe at school. They provided a lot of information in terms of future metrics and decision-making that the district can take into consideration should COVID spike in our area, they provided a rationale for why we should look jointly at the macro data around us, but also the micro data at each school site. And again, provided a lot of confidence for that. And I just wanted to thank Dr. Johnson, Dr. Agbo, Dr. Renee, Dr. Robinson, Dr. Schrantz, Dr. Siglin, Dr. Soglin, and Dr. Wild, and to the parents, Rebecca Langen and Maria Morales, who participated because they were a great working group. And while we have an opportunity to open up our schools, I just want to acknowledge that we have given many people the choice, students and families, the choice of whether or not they want to opt their children into the hybrid learning program. I just want to extend thanks to our educators, because we didn't have the opportunity to give our educators a choice. We were able to give our educators an environment that we mitigated for, that we prepared for and planned for, and put them in a position to be successful. But it's going to require the execution of a plan. And the best thing we can all do as a community, parents and students alike, is stick strictly to the plan. Wear a mask, socially distance, wash your hands. That is the best thing for our teachers who are coming back into the schools, and for our kids. While everybody is getting vaccinated, it will not be the time to loosen up on our behaviors in the environment just because school is opening. And hopefully as a community, every school community can wrap around and take care of our kids and our educators until everybody gets vaccinated, so we can continue to get through this together. Thank you.
Thank you, Joey. Sergio?
Thank you, board colleagues and President Tanya Budi and Superintendent Horton for the updates, and thank you to all our high five winners. I mean, again, we're so proud of you and all the work that you do on behalf of D65 students and families. Just had a couple of thoughts that I wanted to share. One, I just want to make sure that we acknowledge the parents and community members who've reached out to us as board members, right, in this very, very difficult time. And what we've heard a lot is that, again, we all agree. I think that none of us are here on this board can say that we think that this is the best situation to be teaching children in, right? I think everybody in this institution wants our children back, just as bad as the folks who've reached out to us. But at the same time, we as a board, I'm very proud of this board, want to make sure that we're prioritizing equity and elevating the voices of folks who haven't been able to reach out to us, who don't have the luxury to reach out to us through emails or trying to call us, or really trying to prioritize, the voices of folks who have been left out, right? Because to be honest, the loudest voices aren't necessarily the most representative. And we all, again, want our kids back, but we want to make sure that they're safe. So I appreciate our superintendent in making sure that we got together the medical advisory board, made up of different folks in our community, in the medical community, to help us plan. Again, I really appreciate their help and echo Joey's sentiments in regards to helping us affirm our plans and how, again, we've been planning from the very get-go to make sure that kids come back safely. But at the same time, again, I just wanted to share that, again, I want to ask community members who are reaching out to us to continue reaching out as we continue to try to deal with some of the pandemics that were here before the COVID-19 pandemic. And those are the pandemics of economic insecurity for a lot of our families, access to quality public health and health in general for many of our marginalized families. So again, my ask is that, again, for families who are reaching out for their own kids, to make sure that you're reaching out for all of our kids. And then part of the reason why I ran to become a board member is because we did not have a voice. My community didn't have a voice in these conversations because we didn't know how to navigate the system. We're not sure how to engage power, but I've learned, but I need your help and we need your help. So the folks who have reached out to us, who've been upset with us, who've supported us too, make sure that you stick around, because we have so many battles to continue in regards to this equity work, because this is a journey. And again, we'll be dealing with an economic pandemic, and particularly that's impacting our most marginalized families. We're going to be dealing with the public health access pandemic, definitely a mental health pandemic, right? But to be honest, I really think, again, we know the research around children, and children are resilient, and they're as resilient as the adults around them, right? So we have to get together and talk to one another and communicate with one another as a community and meet each other, in the middle, to make sure that our kids are successful and they have the best outcomes possible, once we return back to school. So just wanted to put that out there. Again, thank you for your patience. Thank you for your grace. Thank you for pushing us as a board to make sure that we're accountable to kids in the community. Again, this is what we signed up for. Again, what things that I read haven't been, again, the most favorable or happy or made me happy, but hey, that's what I signed up for. That's what we signed up for, and we're here to work for you. So thank you for pushing us. Thank you for your patience. And we all deserve grace, all of us, as we move forward beyond this pandemic. I believe that's all and just one more thing. So then we will be having some virtual cafes so you can engage us. So wanted to invite the community out for their café. Lo voy a decir en español. Entonces vamos a tener un café virtual, yo y mi colega Rebeca Mendoza, este sábado a las 10 de la mañana. Entonces para las familias latinas va a ser una presentación en español sobre el impuesto, el presupuesto de la escuela y de nuestras finanzas. Entonces invitamos a a las familias latinas que gusten participar y informarse sobre lo que estamos haciendo en este distrito. Vamos a estar disponibles para ustedes a las 10 de la mañana este sábado. So for folks who are Spanish speaking families, I know my colleague Rebecca and I will be having a virtual cafe at 10 a.m. all in Spanish. So we welcome you. That's all I have.
Sergio, can I add that the Spanish Cafe will be translated into English for those who are monolingual and need English translation? And our English Cafe will be translated into Spanish as well. So we will provide those translation services. Thank you, Sergio. Was there anyone else, board colleagues, that wanted to make comments this evening? Okay, I just wanted to echo the comments made by my colleagues this evening, and thank you, Rebecca, for encouraging us to take a moment to pause. There's a lot of grief in this pandemic that we don't have the opportunity to process in community. And it's important that we do take those moments to remember and to feel what we need to feel as a community. So thank you for calling attention to that. I wanted to also take a little bit of time this evening to call attention to the yeoman's work that has gone into creating a reopening plan, as we've alluded to a couple of times now. Thank you to our administration. Thank you to our bargaining units. Thank you to our families. And thank you to our kids. Our kids have been patient. They have been adaptive. They have been creative. Thank you to everyone for all of the work and effort that has gone into creating a plan that in an environment that is unpredictable, that can also create some predictability and some measures of safety, given so much that is out of our control. And without the guidance that we deserve from our national governments, we've had to figure this out locally. And that's really required us to be collaborative, to be trusting, to come at this work in good faith on behalf of the stakeholders that we all value and care for and represent. And so I have tremendous gratitude to you all for your creativity, for your expertise, and for your commitment to pulling together a plan that's representative of a broad scope of needs and priorities. I know y'all have been working since the fall It's evident the amount of detail and intricacies and thoughtfulness in terms of stakeholders' needs is evident. And I look forward to hearing from our kids and families about their experience of these plans in action. So we'll have the opportunity to have the joy of, children's laughter and squeals and conversations and are echoing through our hallways and classrooms again. And that is, that's a gift to them, and that's a gift to all of us in our community. So thank you. I also we're going to have the chance to dig into this early childhood report that is on the agenda this evening, but I want to acknowledge the particular joy that I had in seeing some of those positive kindergarten readiness outcomes. There's definitely some areas of concern and work for us to dig into, and I won't deny that, but 5 years ago, it was difficult to talk about our early childhood programs in hopeful and confident ways. And reading this report tonight was really heartening to see the impact that investment in our children and families at a young age produces in that kindergarten readiness outcome. And that is the metric for closing the gap in opportunity to achieve. That those early predictors of kindergarten readiness mean so much. And I'm really proud of the shift and looking forward to digging into that conversation. But I wanted to specifically point that out in my comments tonight, that our community has something to celebrate and something to be proud of in our investment in racial equity. Our investment in racial equity is an investment in people and in people's experiences. And it is a gesture of love and care to our community to say that we believe in you. We believe in you. We believe that you are worthy of our investment. And we know that when we invest, you will show up. And the outcomes will show. And no one has to prove that they are worthy. They shouldn't have to. Institutions should value everyone's humanity because everyone's humanity exists in our community. So thank you for the work that has, and the vision and the commitment to building equitable systems that has produced opportunities for children to fulfill their true aptitude. Every child deserves that. So thank you. I think my comment was the last board comment before we move on. Okay. So we're going to move on in our agenda to public comments. Any member of the public wishing to submit a comment to be read at the January 25th, 2021 board meeting was asked to email their comment to the board secretary, Qureshi A at district65.net by 5 p.m. this evening. And Adila, I will turn it over to you to read the public comments that we received.
We received 2 public comments. I'll start with a comment from Lee Clifford. She submitted a public comment to be read tonight, dated January 10th. Dr. Horton and District 65 Board, when I read the latest email delaying the return of in-person learning yet again, I was struck by how deeply the superintendent and board seems motivated by factors that have nothing to do with the well-being of our kids. You have heard how dire the situation is from teams of local doctors, pediatricians, and mental health experts. You have heard tales of children on the brink of suicide struggling to get out of bed and log into Zoom, formerly bright and engaged students whose lives have fallen apart as a result of your decision to keep Evanston schools closed for 10 months. I want to be very clear. Adults and children in our community have gotten and will continue to get COVID. You cannot prevent this, but the mental and health crisis unfolding in our community is now squarely on your shoulders. It is particularly galling this administration and board is allowing this to unfold because there is nothing new or developing about the science of safely reopening a school. This has been known widely since this summer. I and many others have been writing this to you repeatedly for the better part of 6 months. If there is fear in the community about returning to school, you and members of this board are partly to blame. As recently as last month, your board president was misreading Illinois state data and sending emails alleging that schools were super spreaders. She had to be corrected by a local doctor that she was misreading the charts. Now, 10 months into the pandemic, you concede that elementary schools have not been a cause of COVID clusters or increased community spread. But have the members of this board publicly corrected the misinformation they had been spreading in the community? It is your job as our leaders to seek out misplaced fear and to convince the community what the data has shown, that schools can be operated safely. To that end, I call on this superintendent and board to seek out medical professionals for medical advice. Teachers and parents may have valuable insights, but they are not medical professionals. As we now know, your 60+ person District 65 return to school task force that met over the summer during a global pandemic did not contain a single doctor or mental health professional, which is shocking. I call on you to have your new medical advisory panel consist only of medical and mental health experts. With knowledge of how to safely open schools and the dire warnings of our local medical and mental health professionals about what isolation and e-learning are doing to our kids, it now becomes inexcusable to delay school by a month, a few weeks, even a few days beyond when they can safely open. I call on you to reopen schools immediately. Here in January 2021, it is way past the time for your team's focus to be getting less than half of Evanston's kids to school 4 days a week for 2.5 hours a day. Now the focus must be figuring out how to get every child and teacher back in the classroom for 5 days a week for a full school day in fall 2021. What is your plan to make this happen? I call on you to release a detailed plan to the community for a return of all students full-time to the classroom in fall 2021. Dr. Horton, I truly believe that along with your colleagues, the superintendent of Chicago, New York, and LA school districts, that you fundamentally understand how devastating a year of e-learning has been to our kids. The next many years of your life, the lives of the members of this board and the lives of the parents in this community will be consumed with trying to make up the academic progress, rebuild social emotional health, and re-engage children harmed by the decision to keep schools closed for nearly a year. It is time right now that you reverse course and do what needs to be done. Let our children learn and reopen Evanston schools. Signed, Lee Clifford. The next statement we have is from Holly Hoffman. She writes in an open letter to the school board. The past several years in America have clearly and unfortunately exposed facts that many had come to deny. Systemic racism is invisible, fuel powering American society. The past year sharpened that focus in ways too numerous to delve into here. In short, we currently stand at an intersection of racial intolerance and gross mismanagement of healthcare and education. All of this results from intentional deconstruction of many layers of government, starting at the highest level. While many people used to think that the government worked from the top down, many more people are now awakening to the importance of good governance from the bottom up. When voting, it is imperative that critical thinking citizens consider the impact of down ballot choices. Whether or not one has school-age children, boards of education are vital positions in creating solid communities. Good schools are foundation for good communities, and a well-composed board of education makes the decisions that keep schools serving their communities equitably, fairly, and with the students at the center of all their decisions. The District 65 Board of Education, under the leadership of President Anya Tanya-Rudy and Vice President Biz Lindsay Ryan, and in partnership with the District Superintendent Dr. Horton, has been under an ongoing and unprecedented attack driven by ignorance and white supremacy. Paralleling the national rise in animus driven by ignorance and lies, this attack has been largely elitist, racist, and sexist in nature. It is disgusting, and I, for one, cannot sit idly by and allow it to continue without comment. Board President Tanya Vudi has over 20 years of experience as an educator, curriculum developer, grant writer, community organizer, and social rights activist. She's put her bachelor's and master's degrees to work serving children and communities in need for her entire professional life and works tirelessly to steward the Evanston School District through these tough times. She has been unjustly attacked for working to do what is right and equitable in the district. Vice President Lindsay Ryan likewise holds bachelor's and master's degree as a professor, program director, consultant, curriculum developer, and TEDx talk presenter. She works tirelessly to dismantle racism, develop leadership and educational equity teams, and create environments supportive of all races and sexual identities. The disgusting attacks on her as a District 65 leader were brutally racist and homophobic, intentionally flying in the face of all that she stands for. Superintendent Dr. Horton was chosen for District 65 at a time when children of color were notably underserved in our schools. His career experience over 20 years included teaching and serving as an administrator in Chicago, East St. Louis, and Kentucky schools, developing numerous programs benefiting students of colors in districts where student populations were 98% Black and annual budgets ranged from hundreds of millions to upwards of $1 billion. His career has focused on improving equity, raising MAP scores, staff bias training, teacher pipeline diversity, expanding student advancement, placement enrollment, improving college enrollment, and persistence, among many others. He is driven to develop an environment where students of color and diverse cultural backgrounds are given a seat at the table of success here in Evanston. The entire board is working together to navigate these difficult times and to make difficult decisions about what is best, not only for our students, but our community as well. Even in a perfect world, no single answer will ever suit everyone in a community, and no single policy will ever serve everyone equally. But it is patently racist to demonize those who are using their combined skill set to serve and elevate those who have systemically and historically been underserved and mistreated in our community. It is important to note that opportunity is not a pie. A larger slice for someone who has had less of it does not mean a smaller slice for those who have already had more. Equity is about stacking the deck to help those in need of more assistance or resources get what they need to match others' success. This is true whether one is talking about racial, sexual orientation, financial, educational, or health considerations. Attacking the board and superintendent for doing their best and to make things happen is proof that we as a society still don't understand these basic principles. It is, in a word, heinous. We need Black lives to be given the same chance to thrive that white lives have enjoyed for hundreds of years here in the United States. Black lives matter. Yet amid the ideological battle, others are still willing to join the fray. People like Donna Wang Su recently applied to run for District 65 Board of Education and offers a long resume of teaching and administrative work. Moving forward, our district needs more Board of Education members with this kind of background. Like Tanya Rudy, Lindsay Ryan, Donna holds bachelor's and master's degree, as well as multiple certificates from Northwestern University. We're all in this together and need to cease this endless aggression. The energy wasted on hate would be so much better used to find solutions from everyone creatively working together rather than enabling further racism and division. Thank you, District 65 Board of Education members, for all you do. Sincerely, Holly Hoffman. That concludes the board, public comments for tonight.
Sorry,
Okay.
thank you, Dila. Yeah, go ahead, Rebecca.
All right, we're moving on to our consent agenda. I move that the Board of Education accept the recommendations outlined in the attached group motion and approve the following. Track movement appeals, appointments, leaves, and separations, dismissal of educational support staff, December 2020 Board of Education meeting minutes, destruction and the release of December 2018 closed session meeting minutes and recordings, gift acceptance for Dewey Elementary School, November 2020 list of bills and budget amendments, and finally, the October-November 2020 Treasurer's Report.
Second.
Hernandez,
Yes.
Lindsay Ryan,
Yes.
Mendoza,
Yes.
Cartha,
Yes.
Halpern,
Yes.
Kim, Tanya Vudi.
Yes.
Great. The motion passes 7-0.
Sunny, you have the next motion.
I move that the Board of Education award the contract for the ejector pump replacement at Dawes to Adler Plumbing and Heating, Inc. as presented.
Second.
Okay. Hernandez,
Yes.
Lindsay Ryan,
Yes.
Mendoza,
Yes.
Cartha,
Yes.
Halpern,
Yes.
Kim,
Yes.
Tanya Vudi.
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0.
I move that the Board of Education award the elevator repair at Haven and King Arts contract to D. Kersey as presented.
Second.
I have a quick question before we do roll call.
Mhm.
And actually, I had this question about the plumbing as well, but we had talked a couple years back about looking for local, specifically women and minority-owned businesses to work on the smaller bids that we have as a district. Was there intentionality about making sure that smaller local entities had the opportunity to bid on these?
Yes, there was. What we do whenever we have a bid going out, we reach out to Evanston NAACP and let the folks there know that we have these bids that we're letting out so that they can inform minority Evanston-based companies to be able to respond to the bid. In this particular case, for the ejector, as well as the elevator, we were trying to bundle it together to be able to get some economy of scale pricing. But as it stood, what ended up happening is for the ejector pump, we received 4 bids, and the lowest bid was the one that we recommended. Now for the elevator repairs, we only received 1 bid. So there were other people who showed up, but only 1 bid was submitted. So we tried to engage local vendors to be able to do the work. But in this particular case, the level of interest there just wasn't enough. So.
Okay, thank you. Dila, we can go ahead with the vote.
Okay. Kim,
Yes.
oh, Hernandez,
Yes.
Lindsay Ryan,
Yes.
Mendoza,
Yes.
Cartha,
Yes.
Halpern,
Yes.
Tanya Vudi.
Yes. All right, and that brings us to the early childhood presentation.
All right, Dr. Sprague, we're excited to learn.
I guess I wasn't expecting it to come up so quickly. That looked like a really long agenda. So do I have screen sharing rights?
Yes.
Okay.
Can't believe you said that out loud.
Okay, here we go. All right. Good evening, everyone. I'm very honored to be here tonight to update you all on the work we have been doing towards the implementation of our strategic plan and share with you our students' data that demonstrates the students' response to this plan. 2 years ago, when I arrived at JEH, District 65 kindergarten readiness data as measured by the Illinois Snapshots of Early Learning, the ISEL, showed that our students had been demonstrating readiness at an average rate of only 37% over the 3 years between 2016 and 2018, indicating an urgent need for a strategic plan to improve these outcomes. In school year 18-19, the school and community engaged in the development of a 3-year strategic plan to improve student outcomes and kindergarten readiness. The plan was entitled Equity and Opportunity, Preparing Our Children for Kindergarten and the World Beyond, and was presented to the school board on April 22nd, 2019. The plan was intended to guide our major decisions and actions over the following 3 years. We have moved quickly to ensure that our collective commitment to the plan was enacted through operational planning, systems implementation, and ongoing progress monitoring. We made a commitment to share our progress regularly with the greater District 65 community, and I'm excited to be here tonight to share the updates included in this report. I thought it was important to review our school demographics. I wanted to remind everyone that the demographics at the center are not like any other District 65 school. One major point to draw everyone's attention to is our large special education population. This is due to the fact that we are the only school in the district serving this age group. Only Park School has one other pre-K classroom for students requiring very specialized special education supports. All other students in the district with diverse developmental and learning needs attend JEH. They are not dispersed amongst 11 other schools, as will occur once these students begin kindergarten. That unto itself necessitates that our school is designed and staffed more in the model of a therapeutic school. The second thing I would like to point out is that each year, an average of 70 to 75% of our students are eligible for free or reduced lunch. Again, this statistic is much higher than at any other District 65 school. When I was hired at JEH, there was an identified crisis in kindergarten readiness as measured by our students' performance on the fall kindergarten ISIL assessment. District 65 had not adopted the kids' readiness assessment at the time, so literacy assessments have been used to measure as the measure of readiness. Given the demographics of our school, these data represented the beginning of what is referred to as the achievement gap, and then an inequitable barrier to the future educational opportunity for our students. We responded by developing our strategic plan over the course of school year 18-19 to begin implementation in the fall of school year 19-20. The plan had 6 overarching goals, each having a specific set of strategies and targets that were supported by school data, current research, and educational literature. Briefly, I share some highlights for each goal. For goal 1, we created teacher professional learning communities, PLCs, developing a culture of collaboration and collective responsibility. These PLCs meet weekly during common planning time and engage in the work that includes collaborative study of the standards, our curriculum, and assessment objectives, regular data analysis to drive instructional decisions, and a study of instructional practices that included peer-to-peer observations to learn from one another and to foster open conversations about instruction. So far, in school year 21, we have conducted over 135 peer-to-peer observations and an average of 25 leadership observations per week, all of which is serving to foster a deprivatization of practice that research has shown to improve student outcomes. For goal 2, as part of every curriculum unit study, PLCs complete a culturally responsive protocol that asks them to intentionally plan for culturally responsive curricular implementation based on Gloria Ladson-Billings' 3 pillars of CRP: cultural competency, academic achievement, and socio-political awareness. Staff has additionally been introduced to Zaretta Hammond's work on culturally responsive teaching in the brain and Louise Derman-Sparks' work regarding anti-bias teaching. We have additionally made progress in our work to diversify our workforce, and the positive growth in student achievement we hypothesize have been influenced by these factors. Goal 3. The Family Center and the Early Childhood Center both use conscious discipline practices to respond to and develop social interaction and restorative skills between young children. The Early Childhood Center is additionally implementing the trauma-informed curriculum of Second Step to proactively teach social emotional skills. For Goal 4, we have supported staff through additional training in the foundations of early literacy and early numeracy instruction through purposeful play, music, and rhythm. Last year, teachers engaged in a year-long study of the big ideas in early mathematics with the Erickson Institute Math Collaborative. Staff has also been introduced to the importance of intentional instruction of phonemic, phonological, and alphabetic awareness through the use of the Haggerty curriculum and other integrated strategies for instruction of these skills. The Family Center has been focusing on language and early literacy development through the LENA program with the Evanston Public Library and an ongoing professional learning and coaching series with the Erickson Institute on language and literacy development. For Goal 5, our JEH family engagement specialists at the Family Center and the Early Childhood Center have worked hard to engage families and create a vibrant family community. They provide multiple monthly workshops and events, increasing school involvement and engaging families in decision-making. The most significant change we have made in relation to Goal 6 was the restructuring of the administrative team and the creation of the position of Assistant Director of Teaching and Learning to ensure that we have enough leadership capacity at the Early Childhood Center to keep us focused on instruction. The data I will present tonight, I believe, will demonstrate that this reorganization is paying off for our students. So, how are the children doing? Chapter 1, School Year 1920 Winter Checkpoint Data. Last year, due to the COVID-19 school closures, we were unable to complete, sorry, let me head back. Last year, due to the closures, the school closures, we were unable to complete our end of the year assessments. So the winter data has had to serve as our end of the year data. The data represented in the following slides were collected over our winter checkpoint period from January through early March of 2020. So our headline here is that JEH students were beginning to show signs of improved outcomes in response to the strategic plan. I'll start with our Family Center data. The Family Center winter data indicates that students last year were responding well to the SEL language and literacy work that the center was engaging in. The purple and green bands represent the meets expectations and the exceeds expectation ranges, respectively. Physical development has always been a strong point, but these data showed nice development in all areas prior to the COVID school closures. This graph represents student data from the Early Childhood Center, our 3 to 5-year-old programs. It shows data across 6 major domains of social emotional learning, physical, language, cognitive, literacy, and mathematics development, and compare fall and winter data to show growth. The chart shows the percentage of students at our school who were meeting or exceeding expectations on the TS Gold Early Childhood Assessment by our winter checkpoints in early March last year. The blue represents the fall outcomes and the green represent the winter outcomes. Last year, data was beginning to show very positive growth from fall to winter. And additionally, we were seeing much larger percentages of students moving into the exceeds expectations range, which we knew to be more closely correlated with kindergarten readiness. As I have pointed out, special education students make up about 25 to 30% of our school in a typical year. As I discussed earlier, this is because we are the only, I just want to make sure I'm still on the right slide. I am. Okay, sorry. This is because we are the only public school providing almost all special education services for preschool age children in the district. Special education programming is a very important part of our schooling at JEH. Our special education student outcomes also showed strong growth from fall to spring. While these students were not demonstrating grade level performance at the same percentages as the general education students, we celebrate their strong growth, with some students moving into these exceeds expectations range. This chart breaks down our data across the major racial ethnic groups, allowing us to gauge our success in meeting the educational needs of the students in these groups across the 6 domains. Blue bars represent African American students, green represent white students, purple Asian, and orange Latinx. There are 2 major areas of concern based on these data, and those are in the area of language development for all groups and math development for Latinx students. We immediately got to work with the bilingual team on to work on this math data and try to improve outcomes for our Latinx students. As we continue to work on this area in the current school year. As for the area of language development, our leadership teams looked at this and decided to take this year to do a deeper analysis of the trends, and we will be designing this area into our school work plan for school year 22. This chart allows us to compare student performance across the big 6 domains at the same point in the calendar year over 3 school years. What is encouraging to us about this data is that we not only see overall growth over the past 3 years, but we are increasingly seeing students move into the exceeds expectation range, which, as I said before, we know to be more closely tied to K readiness. Remember this slide when I share the K readiness data. Our response to the K readiness data from earlier years was to track more closely the data around early literacy skills of phonemic and phonological awareness and pre-phonics, so sound symbol correspondence skills. Last year, we piloted the use of the Hegarty curriculum for phonemic and phonological awareness in 7 out of 20 general education classrooms. Here you see the encouraging results in this area of early literacy. Students exposed to the program had higher overall achievement, with 86% meeting or exceeding expectations. The Hegarty curriculum also addresses alphabet knowledge, including sound symbol correspondence, which District 65 readiness data had indicated was a particular area of concern for our students. This year, we are implementing the curriculum across all classrooms, and we are hopeful that we are going to see similar results throughout the school, improving K readiness in this area for literacy for all students. So chapter 2, we'll look at school year 2021 fall checkpoint data. The data presented on the following slides were collected over the months of September through November 2020, this past fall. Our headline is, JEH students demonstrate improved overall outcomes, Latinx students need targeted supports. I'll begin again with the Family Center. The fall data from the Family Center's 0 to 3 programs show some encouraging growth in the area of literacy, with more students in the meets or exceeds range than even the winter of the previous year. Language scores appear to be on track, with 86.66% meeting widely held expectations in the fall of school year 2021. Family Center teams continue to have monthly data review meetings to review students' data and plan for individualized instruction. This year's fall data at the ECC cannot be directly compared to data from previous years due to changes forced by the COVID-19 crisis. These changes include smaller sample size, differing assessment environment, and differing assessment components. Our school leadership team convened in the fall to establish guidelines to determine which objectives from the TS Gold observational assessment we would be able to collect effectively in a remote environment. The following charts represent data from the areas we were able to assess in the domains of social emotional learning, math, and literacy. Excuse me. This chart represents student data in the area of social emotional learning at the fall checkpoint. The data is disaggregated by the racial ethnic groups of Black, the blue bars, white, the red bars, Asian is the green bars, and Latinx students represented in the purple bars. The SEL data from this fall shows similar trends to the winter of school year 1920, with more students moving into the exceeds expectations range. There's a great deal to celebrate for our Black, white, and Asian students. Latinx students were lagging in our fall data, which we are evaluating and monitoring closely with our bilingual team. In the area of math, the data presented in this graph shows continued improved indicators for our Black, White, and Asian students in all areas. We believe this overall improved performance is due to the year-long professional learning series and math instruction that teachers participated in last year, and additionally to improved data collection and progress monitoring practices. Our Latinx students are continuing to demonstrate this trend of lagging skills in the area of mathematics, which has caused us to intensify our oversight of professional learning around math instruction with our bilingual team. This is the second data point we have had that is pointing out this discrepancy. There is no intrinsic reason that the children should be performing lower than their English-speaking peers, as the majority of the students, our Latinx students, do receive instruction in Spanish. So this fact is leading us back to analyze the instructional practices for teaching mathematics in our Spanish classrooms. Our fall literacy data showed continued improved indicators again for the Black, White, and Asian students in all areas that we were able to assess during remote learning. These objectives represent all of the sub-skills that earlier K readiness data indicated were areas of relative weakness for our JEH alums. We are incredibly proud of the growth we have been able to achieve for our Black students who have shown overall strong growth with these skills, but have additionally moved increasingly into the exceeds expectations ranges. Our Latinx students are doing well in many areas, but lagging in 2 areas, and we now are working with the bilingual team to ensure that these areas are addressed during instruction and monitored closely. We have additionally purchased new authentic Spanish language texts to supplement each curricular unit we implement. Chapter 3, school year 2021 K readiness data. Our headline here is that JEH students show significantly improved readiness in response to the strategic plan. This table represents K literacy readiness data of JEH alums as they entered kindergarten over the past 5 years, as measured by the district's literacy assessments. School year 1920 saw a noticeable dip in readiness that revealed important information that the JEH team has responded to. That year, there were some changes to test administration, such as a smaller sample size due to the adoption of the STEP assessment at many schools, and the reduction of number and subtests administered by schools that were still administering the ISIL. All of these changes could have had an impact on the results that would cause the data to drop. Still, the news reinforced the urgent need to implement our plan. One of the major takeaways from the 1920 data analysis was that JEH students were not showing preparedness and alphabet awareness. This was presented at District 65 presentation to the school board this past September. Students in this school year 1920 sample were students who went through the programs at JEH prior to the adoption of the 3-year strategic plan. The kindergarten students represented in the 2021 data were the first students to have gone through both preschool years at JEH after the administrative change in leadership in school year 19, and the first students to have been taught since the implementation of the strategic plan. And we are very encouraged by these outcomes where students have shown an increase of 40 percentage points when compared to the average over the previous 4 years. So those are the students in green all the way to the right. This chart compares JEH alums, so it's the green bars, with other students across the district, the blue bars, who have had preschool experience. So all children here have had some preschool experience. These data are broken down across MAP literacy assessment subcomponents of listening comprehension, phonics and word recognition, phonological awareness, picture vocabulary, concepts of print, and sentence reading fluency. Our big celebration here is that JEH students are narrowing the gap when compared to other students across the district, many students who come from more privileged backgrounds. The one area that all students across the district performed poorly on was the area of print concepts, and we are currently working to understand how those skills are measured on this assessment and begin analysis of our instruction of those skills. This chart represents JEH students' performance across all subtests on the MAP literacy assessment as broken down by the expectation continuum. Celebrations here are the large numbers of JEH alums who were performing in the exceeds expectation range across subskills. As discussed earlier, we will be doing a deeper analysis of the MAP assessment expectations for print concepts in order to evaluate how we are teaching those concepts at JEH. Overall, however, these data demonstrate a dramatic improvement in K readiness for our JEH students. The big takeaway from this report is that just 1 year after the initial implementation of our JEH strategic plan, both preschool TS goal data and MAP K literacy readiness data indicate that we have begun to provide improved outcomes for our JEH alums. This is important because significant research shows that students who arrive in kindergarten demonstrating readiness are much more likely to stay on track by 3rd grade and throughout their educational career. Students who are on track in the 3rd grade remain on track and are more likely to complete high school and enroll in college. While we still have a ways to go to achieve all the goals laid out in the plan, and our Latinx students are continuing to lag in certain key skills, we have organized the school and established systems that allow us to identify these problems and respond with targeted interventions in a timely fashion. Our next steps will be to continue building a culture at JEH that is collaborative and data-driven, to continue to drive all strategies in the strategic plan. We will continue to provide strength-based, anti-bias, respectful, and inclusive learning environments. We celebrate our achievements to date, but remain intentionally focused on maintaining this growth, ensuring that all students at JEH over the years are individually prepared for kindergarten and the world beyond. I want to extend my thanks to our families and the community for their support and partnership in this work. Thank you to the school board, Dr. Horton, and District 65 leadership for your continued support and commitment to the plan. A huge thanks to our teachers and staff who are on the front line implementing these strategies and affecting positive change. And of course, my deepest gratitude to my administrative team, Angela Johnson at the Family Center, Jessie Block and Teresa Lee at the Early Childhood Center for leading this work. I would not be here reporting these positive outcomes if it were not for the hard work of all of those involved. Thank you so much for your time. And any questions? I guess I can stop sharing. Any questions?
Thank you, Sharon. Yeah, this is a discussion item for us tonight, so we may have a number of questions and comments.
Do we come back to that later? Is that how it works?
No,
Oh,
we're
okay.
doing right now.
Okay.
Yeah. Biz?
I want to start as someone who has worked with JEH long before your tenure, Sharon. I think while I'm big on accountability, I'm also big on credit. And I think you should be getting some tremendous credit for the progress that we're seeing here. You have invested in really important things, and you can see that progress is coming. And so I am grateful for your leadership and stewardship through what we all know is a critical piece to addressing the opportunity to achieve. So as you mentioned, like this is really hopeful. So I want to just take a moment and like be in that hopeful place and celebrate, because I think while there are things that we've identified that are still challenges, that we don't get to celebrate progress in this area enough. And so I hope we can learn from what you all have done at JEH, but I do have a couple of questions. So first, thank you, but now I'll ask my questions. The first is, in light of the pandemic, what do we need to be thinking about in terms of transition plans for kids that will be going on to kindergarten next year? How do we need to prepare kindergarten teachers for whatever gaps that may exist in what we are able to deliver in this more remote setting? I think that's going to be a really critical piece to make sure that they recognize, that kids are not necessarily coming in with all of the pieces that they may have before, and what kind of supports do we need in place? So have you all started that planning yet? I know we have a while, but kind of what are we anticipating are some of the bridges that we're going to need to get our kindergartners fully where they need to be?
Well, we did last year, of course, just before the schools closed, we had started developing partnerships and had some meetings with kindergarten teachers. And we're really working to develop that partnership that did sort of fall by the wayside when COVID hit. But again, we would like to be opening these discussions with the kindergarten team, and I think it would be a great idea to try to get that going before the summer. We are busy scheduling kindergarten transition meetings right now. That's a little bit more around special ed and students with significant MTSS supports going on. But we are starting to plan for that right now. And additionally, I think, a lot of what we're seeing, we'll see how things are going when students get back in school and what kinds of gaps we're seeing once they arrive. And we'll be able to sort of chart differences between the students who are continuing to learn remotely and those who are in person. And that will help us to be able to better advise kindergarten teachers as to what to expect. One of the things that we're all very concerned about, just in terms of having students come back into our building in a couple of weeks, is just around students' more functional and social emotional experiences, abilities with one another, learning to interact, understanding how to do school. A lot of students are missing that very important aspect of preschool education right now. So we're going to see, we're very mindful of that as students re-enter the building, and really have a lot of supports in place to try to shepherd them through that transition. School's going to look different than it did in the past. It's going to be a lot more structured, which may or may not be easier for the children. We'll find out. But those are some of the things that we'll be wanting to discuss with kindergarten teachers. I think in terms of the academic aspect of the education, for students who have been able to engage, which is not all of them, unfortunately, we have been able to do a pretty good job of maintaining that. And in some ways, the family school partnership has been stronger than it ever has been before, because the parents have been there by their children's side every day, and they have a much stronger sense of what goes on in the classroom, the objectives that the teachers are presenting, and how to teach it, right? So they can reinforce and work as real learning partners with their children. But some of the things that we're very concerned about is that not all of our students are able to have the supports at home to allow them to engage consistently in remote learning. So there will be gaps there. And as I said before, just like sort of the functional aspect of how we do school, probably I would imagine in kindergarten teachers are going to experience, see that students are going to need more support around those basic skills as students haven't been in school.
Yeah, Sharon, I'm hoping that in whatever transition plans you all make, it really struck me when you said that we're going to still have kids that are going to be doing remote all year. So they're going to go into kindergarten without those social skills and without the kind of understanding of how school works. What I would be concerned about when they arrive in kindergarten is if our teachers are not prepared for that, that's going to be disciplined, and that there would probably be a likely racial disparity in that discipline when they are in kindergarten. And so I think we want to have some more proactive strategies for kindergarten teachers about what kind of onboarding they're going to need to do about school at a higher rate than they may have in the past, because there might be some of those students that don't ever have that in-person instruction before coming to school.
And I think that's a very good point. And I think additionally, it's a discussion to be had with school leaders as well, because as school leaders are going to set expectations for the teachers and support the teachers. And if we need to shift the focus slightly in the early days of kindergarten, in the early months of kindergarten, to help accommodate for this, you know, they need to be aware of this as well. So I will make every effort to make sure I'm communicating this with my colleagues, my school leader colleagues, as well as know that the cabinet is well aware. And additionally, we've been talking, there's been some discussion about extending some of the summer programs. If we possibly can provide a little bit more of our summer jumpstart program, that could be another thing that helps. But if it's continued to be remote, it's not going, it's only
Right.
help in the same way. So
it's just such a critical part of learning at this age, is learning how to respect other people's boundaries and your own body agency and all of those kind of things. And so we want our elementary schools prepared that they might have to do more of that coaching and support than they've had to do in the past.
Right.
Another question I had is, you know, you've identified a couple of areas where Latinx students are lagging. And I know that in the report, you identified some strategies already that you're employing to address those things. Do you feel like the strategies you have are sufficient? Do you need additional support to make sure that we are closing the gap, particularly for Latinx students?
I don't know that we need additional support at this point. I think, you know, this last winter, when we looked at this data, we were looking at it in the spring. I think, you know, the first response is, well, what's, you know, going on, and lots of analysis, well, why the data could be wrong or this or that. You know, that's kind of the usual response. But the teachers did take it very seriously, and they were at that point engaging in the math series at Erickson Institute. And so bringing a lot of new strategies into the classroom. I just think that this fall, with all of the transition and differences in the way, you know, in student lives, in school life, that math instruction in our Latinx classrooms maybe wasn't the main focus for all of them. And now that we're taking a look at this data, and we've done so much study around the fact that math is a tremendous equalizer. It's also a wonderful way to teach language skills in early childhood, because there's so much language involved around explaining, describing attributes, sharing, that it really helps foster language development for young children in the discussion about, and observational discussions around objects that they're sorting and classifying and so forth, describing attributes of shapes. So I think that there is definitely a belief there, and there's skill that has been developed. I think that we had perhaps we hadn't made time as much because we were focusing on other things, but the team definitely sees right now that there's clear data indicating that we need to focus on this. That team has made, as a focus of their second cycle of professional learning communities at the school, focusing particularly, they've honed in on one area in particular, quantifying, that they're going to focus hard on, and they're going to do some intentional study together and do deeper progress monitoring. I do believe that our team has the tools they need, and they have the skill, and they definitely see the need at this point. And I think with leadership support and guidance, they will do the work. And I think we're going to see some improved outcomes. I do believe that, where everybody is committed to it. And I think there, like, as I said at the end of the presentation, the celebration here is that our preschool teachers have developed strong enough skills now at collecting data and looking at data and using it to inform the instruction, that we can see now that this isn't just one blip from last winter. This is starting to look like a trend that we have to attack, and we will.
Great. The one thing that has emerged, not the one thing, one of the many things that has emerged in a lot of our conversations later, but I want to make sure is said while you were on the call, is a need for a larger translation strategy that we have really not been serving our Latinx community in that way and our larger community of non-English speakers. And I think that this is something that's going to need to happen on both the parent and PTA side as well as the District 65 side. I just want to make sure that when those conversations are happening, that you and your team are a part of those conversations as we think about our earliest learners and their families and how language ends up being a barrier to access and sometimes success. So I hope that we make sure that you're a part of those conversations moving forward. But I just, again, Sharon, I think there's a lot of progress here, and I'm grateful for your leadership because it's really promising.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sharon, again, just kudos to you and the team for, again, putting in the hard work. And again, just looks like we have a lot of hope, right? And as a big early childhood advocate, somebody who's, just been a convert the past couple of 5-6 years, it is just phenomenal to see that you're applying some of the best elements of what early childhood means, right? So again, it's just really great. It gives me a lot of hope to see, the improvement. I know with our Latinx students, that there's some struggles that you see there. It seems like you guys are going to work on it. As my colleague, Biz Lindsay Ryan just shared, again, making sure that we really think about making sure that, and I think that the ECC team, the JH team does a really good job in trying to communicate with families at that, Latinx families. At the same time, also thinking about, shared leadership and utilizing BPACs and the Head Start policy committees to work with parents, right, to really kind of figure out those policies around language and how to best communicate and how to best share, really leveraging those relationships, working with our FACE director, Devon Alexander, as well, to kind of work with families just to make sure that we're reaching out and again, making sure that they're at the table, right, as you move strategically to continue and sustain these improvements that you're seeing and really elevate Latinx students' academic performance as well as social emotional development. One of the things I see, and Biz brought it up, was the transition piece, right? Like I've been since the get. I think the transitions are critical. And the kindergarten teacher should know how to receive all of the wonderful things and build on the wonderful things that have happened in early childhood, right? And I think I've seen the previous teaching strategies gold data that's always been really pretty well, even prior to your arrival, right? But for some reason, our district wasn't able to build upon it in the transition from pre-K to kindergarten. So, and then the same thing, again, we should definitely really think about across the system, right? From grammar school to middle school, making sure that we're, sixth grade teachers are prepared to build on what the kids have done in grammar school, and then ETHS, those ninth grade teachers being ready for our eighth graders for our incoming, right? So for me, I mean, it's just in particularly our most marginalized communities who don't have the supports, who don't usually have the tutors that we can hire to kind of help with those transitions, right? It's just really critical. So, and one of the things I appreciate on the report was, okay, so what are some next steps? And then really thinking about kids and the kids assessment, because that's what the kids assessment was meant to be, is kind of this helping with that transition piece, right? By, creating this observational assessment that not only measures, reading and math competency, but also social and emotional development, and then really kind of draws a line between teaching. I see possibly drawing a teaching, drawing a line between teaching strategies gold and the success that you're seeing with ensuring those transitions and that success that you created is built upon in subsequent years in the K-12 system. So again, I appreciate that piece. Again, given that, and just some thoughts in regards to how, again, I think about early childhood, right? And it's about children working together, sitting at tables together, interacting, problem solving with one another, right? And I worry about how, again, now, we're going to bring kids back in a hybrid model, but again, they'll have to be socially distant, right? So it kind of it's counterintuitive to how early childhood works. And I think, as we move forward, right, I just, that's just a concern that I have in my mind. It's like, wow, what we know and love about early childhood, right, is children interacting, learning how to behave with one another and respect one another and work collaboratively. Now that we have to have to work, we have to be socially distant, have to wear masks, hard to see kids smile, hard to really appreciate how, how the teacher is expressing themselves, that I think is a challenge, right? So I just want us to be mindful of that, because again, school's not going to look like it used to look, and that'll be for quite a while. This is across the system. So, as we think about, I ask my colleagues here, as we think about how education will look like, and the parents out there who are pushing us to open schools up, again, school's not going to look the same as it used to. I mean, kids will be laughing because they'll try to play, but they'll have to be socially distant. They'll have to be separated. They won't be doing too much collaborative work. I mean, there's ways to collaborate, right? But it's just making sure that we're mindful of that, right? Because that, I think, is a challenge, but I think a challenge that we can overcome as long as we are trying to be creative and build upon the learnings from remote learning, and then again, some of the best aspects of early childhood. So, but thank you for the work that you're doing.
You're welcome, and I think that you've absolutely identified the challenges that we're facing. That all being able to focus on all that social emotional interaction and that development is such a, I guess, a loss that we're feeling as we're getting ready and preparing the classrooms. What is kind of giving us heart in the early childhood classrooms is we're thinking a little bit more about like Montessori style models, which is not we have not traditionally been a Montessori style school, but Montessori programming really kind of sets up sort of separate but equal spaces for children to allow them to work alongside one another, but not as much together. So that is actually how the classrooms are going to look a little bit more, that kids will have their own equipment. They will each have their own little yoga mat that they will move around to find their own floor space, and all kinds of markers to help them be a little bit more mindful of their body in space and the relationship to one another. They will be able to share experiences alongside each other. They'll be able to talk about them, but yes, like just thinking about how we're going to have our dramatic play areas function when only one child can be there at a time is very hard for a lot of us to think about, but we're working on it and we're trying to figure out systems. And as we have any updates about being able to have more children playing together over time, we're definitely going to look for those opportunities. But there have been a lot of success with Montessori programs over the years, and I do talk to, I meet regularly with the early childhood centers across Evanston, so the private programs that have been reopened. And there are some positive reports that are coming from the experiences students are having at these centers that are open, that are having to do everything we're going to have to do. And they talk about, well, first of all, how the kids are doing a great job wearing their masks, so people can relax a little bit about that. That's pretty much a universal report. And also that a lot of the children are really responding very well to kind of these clear limitations that we're putting on them, that aspect of clarity of what we want and how far they can move. Having those limitations in some ways is setting them free. It's interesting. That's just some feedback that I've heard from some of my colleagues. So I'm hopeful that it's not going to be as dire as some people are predicting, and that we're going to have some positive experience, and we may actually learn some techniques from this experience that we want to hold on to in the years to come. In terms of your earlier comment about the fact that the TS Gold data has looked pretty good in the past, but then students get to kindergarten and it's not transferring. I do believe that a lot of that. So we did some intensive crosswalks in my first year here, looking at ISO, looking at the kids' assessment, which I'll come back to, and TS Gold, and really looking at the criteria in each of those assessments and how they line up. And what we did discover is that in the teaching strategies gold assessment, the exceeds expectation range was more closely aligned with the kindergarten readiness. So this brought out a lot of discussion about, okay, well, how comfortable are we pushing children into the exceeds range? We don't want to push to the point where we're stressing them out or so forth. So we just started pushing a little and trying to monitor and see if we were intentionally teaching certain things, if we could move them in that direction without putting too much pressure on them, do it in a developmentally appropriate manner that was fun and playful and musical and rhythmic. And so that is what we've had our sights set on. And we are, as you saw in the data, moving more students into that exceeds range. And if we can continue to do that, I'm hopeful. I mean, we only have one data point that is very encouraging from K readiness. So I'm hoping to see the same again next year, or something similar, maybe better. That is going to have an impact. You know, if we're teaching into that range, that we will be preparing the students for kindergarten.
Thank you, Cynthia. I wanted to chime in. Again, my incredible gratitude for the impact that your leadership has had, Sharon. Sergio and I actually were both on the early childhood task force that helped to create the strategic plan that, or not, was it called a strategic plan? I can't remember what it was called, but we helped to create the document that was handed over to you for you to make the 3-year plan that you presented to us. And I wanted to acknowledge the thoughtfulness and some of the additions that you made to the plan. We specifically last time gave some feedback about including more data about 0 to 3 progress. And I noticed that in this report, you included a lot of data about our 0 to 3 growth metrics, as well as 3 to 5. And I did have a question. When you mentioned Family Center in the report, were you referring to the entire Doorway to Learning or to early Head Start measurements?
So I was the entire Family Center, which includes the home visiting program and Doorway to Learning, which is more the early Head Start programming on site. That data includes TS Gold data for both. All of the teachers for both of the home visiting program and the Doorway program are participating in the Lenya language program in partnership with the Evanston Public Library, and have been receiving the training in language and literacy development from the Erickson Institute. All teachers at the Family Center last year, teachers and classroom assistants, all staff really, received training in conscious discipline. So last year there was a little bit more focus around the social emotional learning, and this year it's moved more deeply into language and early literacy development, maintaining the work around social emotional learning, which is, you know, it's been a little bit harder this year to implement a lot of the strategies that we worked on teaching last year, because the Family Center was open for about a month and a half in September through October, but ended up closing down when we decided to close, not to go forward with the special education programs and really shut down the schools and get the buildings in late October. But we have been really working to try to look at the data. The Family Center, the way we work with data there is a little bit more individualistic. So there are monthly meetings where the classroom data is pulled. So we look at observational data for each student. It's a much smaller program, right? So it's easy. We can do this more fully on a monthly basis. And teachers meet with Angela Johnson and Sarah Sheik and Sheik Knight, and they they go through all the data and they make plans and goals for the upcoming month for each student. And so it's a little bit different. It's less global way of looking at things. So they do have the opportunity to do that periodically, but it's more like focusing on their classroom and trends in their classrooms or with the groups of students that they're working with at home visiting, so forth.
Well, thank you for including that group of children and families that we have an impact on. That's a incredible predictor of long-term access of opportunity and resources. So thank you for you all's intentionality, but also sharing that with us tonight. I did also have some questions about the trends and outcomes for our Latinx learners and their families. I'm curious, I know that we have, is it considered a dual language preschool classrooms, or are they considered?
It is part of a dual language program, right? So dual language has many different, I guess, aspects of learning. So there are, there's in the elementary schools, we have two-way immersion programs. We can't really do that at the ECC. We have more of what's called like a transitional bilingual education program. That is a type of dual language program. We are unable to do TWE because we don't have, we can't, the grants put a lot of limitations on the number of English speaking students that we can have in, and we just can't meet the grant requirements and do that. And at any rate, with the young children, having it more of a 90% model in their language one, their home language, is recommended. So you want to have a very rich opportunity for them to start learning school and start learning early literacy in their language one, and then gradually start to get exposed to it. So by the time they get exposed to language two, so by the time they get to elementary school, then they have a little bit more stronger base on in English language two, and are better and their language one skills are stronger, and early literacy skills are stronger in language one, and they can start to transfer that when they get to the TWE program. So it is a type of dual language program, but it's more of a transitional bilingual program than it's not a TWE program.
Okay. So that actually leads to the other question that I had, which is, are students being assessed in their language one or home language?
Yes, they are.
Okay.
And all of our instructional materials are available in language one. But as we've been doing unit studies and really looking at the texts that come with, so we use creative curriculum and teaching strategies gold. Observational assessment is linked completely integrated into that curriculum. They go hand in hand. And so anyway, as we've been doing the unit studies of the creative curriculum units, we go through all the texts and the teachers look at them and make decisions. A lot of those units are designed to be taught over 8 weeks, and due to the pacing schedule of the district and our building and things we have to get through, we don't always have a full 8 weeks. So they have to make certain intentional decisions about which books they're going to, which sections they're going to teach and which they're going to cut. And in having those discussions and looking at the books and the texts, they sometimes have asked to have a different text provided, because some of the texts are not authentic Spanish language texts. They're English texts that are translated into Spanish, and they want to provide, richer, culturally responsive literature experiences for the students, and really make sure that they're listening to a story that's written in language one, right? So we've been working hard to do that. And for every unit, the teachers have been researching a supplemental text that we've been purchasing and providing for the students to ensure that they do have those rich language experiences. I'm wondering if I lost track of the actual core of your question there, though. Did I hit on what you were looking for, Anya?
Yeah, I was curious about the exposure to home language and if that was a barrier in assessment outcomes. The other thing that I noticed that I'm wondering if you all talked about or had any solutions ruminating about was that the fall data from 2019 indicated that Latinx children were not meeting outcomes in two areas, and they happen to both be like subjective measures of social emotional outcomes. And so I wonder if y'all had talked at all about the subjectivity of the assessment and if that was a factor in how those outcomes were showing up.
You're talking about the data from just this past fall. Yeah.
No, there's the slide that was from 2019. It was like, it was two social and emotional measures.
So I have one from just this past fall that has 4 different social emotional measures. And then there was one from last winter, if that's maybe what you're.
Perhaps it was the winter one. I'm sorry.
I'm just gonna look back just to, so it's actually put together. I'm wondering if you're thinking about this, the slide from last fall, which I can share again real quick if you want.
Sharon, this, and Anya, correct me if this is not what you're getting at, but I know when Romy did her presentation about racial disparities in SPED, language was one of the categories that we were concerned that there was maybe some bias in identifying students there. Is that related to what you're saying, Anya?
Yeah, not specifically for SPED students, but just the subjectivity of.
Yeah, just the bias can easily bleed into that assessment. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think it was about understanding of limits and.
Yeah. So this slide, right? I think
is limits, takes care of needs. Those are subjective measures, right?
Yeah, so I mean, this is I guess an ongoing issue around observational assessments, that you have to have pretty clear rubrics about what it is you're looking for, with strong checklists and identifiers of behaviors that you might be looking to observe. So these 4 areas were chosen because the leadership teams, both the school climate team and the school instructional team, looked through the assessment and tried to identify areas that we might be able to observe in remote learning. And then they put out a list of things to watch for that people might observe. And that, in combination with the markers from the assessment, teachers looked at to try to identify this. There is a certain amount of subjectivity to this, as there would be in anything. And I would say in the social emotional area, it is probably one of the harder areas that we had to assess on, trying to do it remotely. But here they were looking a lot about, following the routines and whether the students were, that sort of follows limits and expectations, whether the students were following classroom routines well, whether they're learning how to deal with the microphone and respect the rules around the microphones and turn taking and things like that. And the taking care of needs, some of that was about how independent they were becoming with some of this in the few months that they had to do remote learning. And
the question layered on top of that, has any cultural lens been applied to the rubric?
So
how one community may define taking care of needs or following limits would be different than another?
So that, I think, that has come up in our analysis of this data, right? So the bilingual teachers, and I can stop sharing because you've seen this. The bilingual teachers did talk about the fact that the children are at home with their families, and that there is a tendency within their culture, and the bilingual teachers do come from this culture as well, to help and support the children more. And African-American teachers have also shared that it's kind of the opposite in their culture, that there really is, from an early age, a tendency in the culture to want to foster independence. And that was something that we, it's like I said, it's one data point right now in a remote environment. But these are some of the conversations that we have had around why this may be going on. So we say that it's an area of concern. The Latinx students have historically performed well in social emotional learning. So it's not we don't consider it to be an area of crisis at this point, but it's an area of concern that we want to watch and monitor, right? But it may, you're absolutely right, it may be grounded in just some cultural differences of home life and how we raise our children in different cultures. So for that, for that reason, I never want to look at our data as anything that's judgmental. It's not there to judge the students, to judge a culture. It's just there to give us information about how we might respond and support the students, right? So it's there to inform our practices and let us know if we need to watch something a little bit more closely, or if we do need to be analyzing for just that question that you've asked, Anya. Are we being culturally responsive in the way we're thinking about the data and the way we're responding to the data, the way we're supporting? And it may be that when we go to the next round, we determine that either they've improved or there are other reasons, and it's really not an area of concern. But at the moment, we're looking into it deeper. So, we work, when we see that kind of a discrepancy, we have some concern and we're going to look into it.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I think in my experience as a Black woman, I find that data is often used to pathologize us as individuals and as a community. And, it's valuable for us to take time to deconstruct that, data has some objective measures, but there's also some subjective elements of how we analyze it and how we use it. And I hope that we can have these types of conversations at the board level to be thoughtful about how we're consuming data, and how we're talking about our kids and our families. And thank you. I appreciate you deconstructing that for me and the team for digging into that data in a thoughtful way. And I think the other question I had was about representative leadership, which in some ways you answered that we do have instructional staff that is representative of the backgrounds of the students who are being educated, which I appreciate and I'm aware of. How do we also have that type of representation in administrative or decision-making roles? For example, the team you referenced that decided which social emotional skills would be measured and how the rubric would look.
Yes, definitely in all of our school leadership teams. They're very diverse and well represented across all racial ethnic groups. I've worked hard to ensure that. Where I would say there's still opportunity for improvement in our school would be like an administrative diversity, right? So that I mentioned that both around our goal 2, which is to strengthen cultural responsiveness and welcome diversity within our school, and goal 6 which is to make sure our resources are supporting all the other goals. We have really kind of consciously worked to try to diversify our staff. Our teaching staff was pretty heavily white when I got here, and we have really, when we've had opportunities, we're not asking people to leave who are doing a good job and have worked, hard to support our students. But as we've had positions open up, we have been really careful to try to provide opportunities to diversify the staff. And we have been able to really increase the number of African-American teachers in the school so the classroom teachers, when I arrived there were only 2, and now we're up to 5 African-American classroom teachers at the school. We have also been able to increase the diversity on our leadership, our administrative team. in that when we added the position of Assistant Director of Teaching and Learning, I was very fortunate to find an African-American leader with a very strong background in early childhood education and urban educational leadership, Ms. Teresa Lee. And she has brought very valuable perspectives to the school and strong leadership for for everyone at the school, but in particular for our Black teachers, and strengthening their voice and their advocacy for the students within the school. And I think, I hypothesize that some of the improvement we're seeing in the data is related to this strength, this diversity. So students and families are seeing mirrored in their teachers and their leadership, seeing themselves mirrored in their teachers and their leadership. And I think that is incredibly important on many levels, if for no other reason to help bring that cultural understanding to the school and to the students. And so where we haven't had an opportunity yet would be to increase Latinx leadership in the administrative team. There just hasn't been an opening or an opportunity at this point, but I think that's something to keep in mind in the future, and to look for those opportunities, because I do think it's meaningful to the families, and bottom line, I think it's meaningful to the students. So we'll be looking for, we'll look for those opportunities. At the moment, you've got me, a white woman, in charge, but over time, there may be other opportunities, okay?
Thank you.
I just had a comment and a quick question. Thank you for that report. It's really heartening as someone coming new to the board. I'm here to celebrate all the work that was done before I got here, so it's very exciting. I just wanted to highlight something I heard in your report that I think is really important. As someone who has done a lot of faculty development, I'm always thinking about that. How do you develop a culture of continuous improvement? And what you said about deprivatizing the practice is so important. And I see Dr. Horton putting things in place to do that at the K-8 level as well. But the opportunity for educators to really get feedback and work together and have eyes in the classroom, right? Not just struggling on their own or working on their own, but working in that really collaborative process. So I just wanted to highlight how important that piece of deprivatizing the classroom and really thinking about the classroom as a public and social space. So I really appreciated that part of the report, and I hope we can continue. And then my question was whether there are plans to track that first cohort, you have the kindergarten data, but will we also be looking at the third grade data? Because you mentioned how important that those third grade assessments are for, continued academic success. So are there plans for that, to follow that cohort into third grade?
Yes, I hope so. Kylie Klein, are you still on the call? I definitely want to work on tracking the students. And we have had some discussion, so there's been change over the last couple of years in RAD, and I came in, and we were looking to try to see if we could track some of the students, alums from years earlier. It was a little messy because at the Early Childhood Center, they didn't always put the student numbers with the students. And so we're being much more careful to make sure all of that is represented every place we need it, so that, Kylie and her team could help us to track the students, because that would be very meaningful for me to see how the students continue through and I think for the district, really, for all of us, to see if this really does make the difference that I believe it's going to make in helping to close the gap, really provide opportunity for our students. So, but the only way we'll really know is to start tracking, just as you mentioned. And in terms of deprivatization of practice, yeah, I'm a huge believer in it. And as I know Dr. Horton is as well. And that is something that was, you know, a little, we had a bumpy start with it. It was challenging.
Yeah, sorry.
We had a hard time getting going with that my first 2 years. And this year, this was a gift that COVID gave us, because suddenly everybody was thrown in the water trying to figure out how to swim, keep afloat. What the heck, what are we doing in the classroom? Nobody had the sense that they knew it all anymore. Like there was not, and everybody was ready to learn from one another. And additionally, did not have to find classroom coverage in order for people to visit one another's classrooms, because, you know, there was an assistant, somebody who could manage doing the online learning while somebody else popped into a lesson in another classroom. So really gave us an opportunity to start this culture. And I would say people were really, people loved it, all of it. And the paraprofessionals were involved in these visits as well. And there's a lot of learning and a lot of discussion around it. And I would say now we're going, from here on forward, we're always going to be looking for those opportunities. Once we get back in person, with those challenges of classroom coverage and so forth are going to continue to exist. But I think people will be, now that we're understanding the value of it, people are going to be more motivated to try to figure it out. So
thank you. And a big shout out to Kylie and your team for the data rich reports that we've been seeing. It's been really helpful and impressive to see the data year to year too. Thank you.
I just want to add that when we were on the early childhood task force, we did review the 5Es of the previous year, and your work was cut out in terms of developing trusting and collaborative collegial relationships. And I'm sure that it's much appreciated to have that shift based on the previous data that we had seen there.
You know, our 5E data is not, we haven't made tremendous growth in that area yet. We're still in the average range, but I'm hoping, well, we'll see. I'm hoping this year that we'll see some improvement, that all of this work is going to start to show up in that 5E data this year. They've delayed they haven't sent the survey out. It's not coming out till April this year, so we won't probably know until next fall, you know, how we've moved, if we've been able to move that data. But yeah, that is something that we really have been working on. Our school climate team has really been working very hard on issues of trust, and there's been a lot of change, right? So that always puts people through a lot. And I think last year was the first year where we were really implementing the plan, and there were bumps along the way. I'm not gonna lie, but we've come through it. And I feel that the teams are stronger. I'm very proud of the teams and their work. I'm very proud of their learning around data. They have all kinds of jokes about me and my data, but I think they are really starting to value it, know how to look at it, know how to look for it, and understanding the importance of how they collect the observational data and how it can really drive their, you know, inform their instruction, and they're happy to start seeing these improved outcomes for the students. So.
Thank you. We're also proud of you all.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, Joey.
I just wanted to start by saying thank you. You make preschool, it's not just fun, but you make it sound very academic, you know, in look, but I'm sure it is very gentle in feel, and that is a skill. So thank you for bringing that to the Early Childhood Center. I was looking back at the past couple of years of this report, and you have clearly been on a journey in bringing use of just the TS Gold, use of the assessments that you've had the whole time, and the data, and kind of bringing everybody together. It's clearly paying dividends for you and your team as adults, but also for the kids and the outcomes. So thank you. And since this is a relay and you're about to pass the baton from your building to many buildings, I think the question Sula asked about, like, kind of flagging kids to track them's the wrong word, but to monitor their progress later. I think it would be great if we were able to keep an eye on cohorts as they go through and make sure that kids who were exceeding expectations when they were 4, that the kindergarten teachers who received them know that they received a kid who is exceeding expectations and can continue to do so in that new place, especially because of the high population of students you serve with various learning needs. You know, sometimes all a teacher might know upon receipt of a child is that maybe that there is an IEP. But that kid with an IEP may have been exceeding expectations the year prior in early childhood. And we want to make sure that both messages get passed on, so we can celebrate kids both in their exceptionalities, but also in their achievements. But I would love to see an opportunity for us in a future year or two to check in on these kids and see if the metrics that are in the right place as they leave your building, Kylie, as we hand over to the elementary schools, if we're able to sustain that. Maybe our new SIS has an ability to flag them so we can run a report and make it easy. But if not, we'll just put some Post-its on some files or something. Thank you.
I definitely am all about a longitudinal study. I would love to follow and see what we can learn from it.
I would be curious the next time we get the early literacy program update, if we don't necessarily have to wait for 3rd grade data, but see if there's any way to track that data when we are looking at the outcomes from early literacy.
To me, I mean, Kylie could speak to that, but it seems doable to me, right? As long as we have the student numbers and we can sort that way, we should be able to follow them through kindergarten, 1st grade, 2nd grade. I think, you know, one thing that has been challenging over the years has been just sort of changes in assessments that were used at kindergarten and primary. You know, so when I arrived here, we had been using the ISIL in the district at kindergarten. And then there was a shift towards the STEP, and I'm not sure where we're at. And and there was also the developmental reading assessment, the DRA, that was used. And all of these are, you know, teacher administered, one-on-one, take a lot of time. And then they started bringing the STEP in, and I'm not sure if we're still using that at all, but I know this year we've just used the MAP. And, you know, if we can try to find some consistency, it will be easier to do longitudinal comparisons than, you know, if there's a lot of changes in assessments. And then at 3rd grade previously, so in the early grades, we had ISIL and the DRA, and then when they got to 3rd grade, they got their first MAP assessment. And yet that's another set of data. So, you know, if we can try to keep that clean over some years, we should be able to track some progress.
Yep. If I may add to what Sharon has just shared, she and I have worked very closely. She's a data lover. I'm a data lover. It's a great match for us. So we work very closely to try to, you know, really interrogate the data and be thoughtful and strategic and look at longer term outcomes. And we're doing some work together to make sure that she can disaggregate the data in meaningful ways. And, you know, one of the challenges that we have had is the lack of consistency. And it is really a hindrance in terms of our ability to look long term. And, you know, unfortunately for this year, we're also going to have some ramifications related to the pandemic and COVID. So, for example, we were very excited about the kindergarten readiness data from the kids assessment. That assessment from this year won't necessarily be as productive for us as an instrument. It will still be meaningful for our students and our educators to look at how kids stack up on the rubric and where they're at developmentally. But because that data won't necessarily be all collected in the same early window of the beginning of fall, that ship has sailed. And so we won't necessarily have that as a longitudinal indicator. So I think that Sharon and I will continue to work together. We'll continue to try to stay the course. Dr. Horton has a strong vision for making sure we stay the course, and under his leadership and guidance, I think that we will be very well prepared over the next few years to be able to really produce some thoughtful and robust analysis. The other thing we have to be very cognizant of is, as we talked about earlier, not necessarily making too many conclusions on the basis of single indicators. We need to have multiple measures, and we need to know that the students who attend JEH are unique in their needs. And so we also have to make sure we have appropriate comparison groups, because we don't want to put out messages that don't honor the growth and the learning of our students, and don't acknowledge the fact that the students served at JEH have, needs that are not necessarily the same as students who are not served at JEH. And so we have to really be thoughtful about the methodology we choose for that sort of longitudinal analysis and make sure we have a comprehensive plan. And I know that Sharon and I will work closely together with all the colleagues on this call to make sure we can bring that analysis to our community. It's very important.
Thank you. Yes, Sunny.
Yeah, so I think that just does then lead to the question. I think this maybe is a question for Stacy. That's something that I think we have noticed over the years too, like the assessment. So what is the plan for? I know kids is required, so that will continue on. But what are the kindergarten assessments that we can routinely expect to be seeing?
So yes, we've been moving through things. This year with COVID, we have really done 3 times a MAP. We have 3 times a year MAP assessment. We are committed to staying the course on that 3 times a year MAP assessment. As far as kind of that next level of diagnostic around reading and math, we have not landed yet on what that next layer of one-to-one assessment would be. STEP is a very strong assessment and it gives us very good information, but it was also a pretty significant learning curve, and we're really trying to get that right balance of time and information. And so that next layer of diagnostic on the one-to-one is a question that we have not yet resolved, but we are committed to the 3 times a year for MAP assessment as our screening instrument. And then we're shoring up the next layers of assessment with some work with Donna Cross and folks across the different departments over the remainder of the year. And the goal is to get to a consistent solution that we remain with, and that is all in addition to kids. And we've been working with a group of kindergarten educators to really determine longer term whether we stick with the 14 required competencies with kids or we expand. And those relationships, I think, are quite connected, because if we commit to a broader range of the indicators for kids, then that will also influence what we choose to collect.
Okay, thank you for that. And I guess my only sort of comment on that is that, we are talking about kindergartners and assessments. And so as usual, I know we're always trying to be mindful of how much assessment time we're imposing on all of our kids, but I think especially our youngest kids.
I think, and one of the things to realize about kids is purely an observational assessment. And so one of the values of that is that we're gathering information from authentic teaching and learning activities. There isn't kind of quote unquote necessarily a test administration. It's about elevating those learning standards and observing it within the process of our daily learning and play and activities. And so we are, though, Suni, I do hear you, clearly aware of that and trying to find the right balance, both for our educators and our kids.
And I completely agree. The kids assessment is much more akin to the TS Gold assessment in terms that it's an observational. You're not sitting a child down in front of you or in front of a computer. I mean, the MAP is, sitting a child down in front of a computer, but it is a pretty limited period of time. So it's not as invasive as some assessments, but the kids, it does follow the same model that TS School does in being an observational assessment. So kids are just doing what they're doing in the classroom, and then you're observing, and then you're taking those observations and kind of running them against a rubric. I did not include the one piece of kids data that we have back in this report because it's only for the students. The only data we have back are for the students from 1920 who finished at our school before we started this strategic plan. So it just didn't seem to tell a story. We had the one data point and it didn't tell much of a story. But I look forward to being able to analyze that data more in the future as we have more data points.
Thank you.
I think it's my turn now.
Yeah.
Thanks. So I wanted to take a moment to recognize and thank District 65 for bringing us new leadership. I think it was long overdue, and it's just such wonderful news that we get this evening to see our kids doing well. And thank you for asking, how are the kids? Because they might not be doing, as well as we would like them, but now we have a better picture. And so, Sharon, I want to thank you. I know that the road here hasn't been easy, but I know that you have been relentless in just honoring our children and our educators. I think for the first time, and since I can recall, JEH is not operating in a silo. So the fact that you're bringing in our bilingual team, that you're referencing them, and that teachers feel like they have the support of our administrative team, K through 8, I think is a huge accomplishment. And so I want to thank you for that, and for bringing in professionals to work on professional development for our youngest of educators. I think it's made a difference, and we can see it through the results this evening. So, board and admin, thank you so much for honoring our kids. I did want to, there's one data piece that's missing that's really important, and I think that's very unique to early childhood, especially JEH. Through our Head Start grant, we do collect information on parent engagement. And perhaps that's something that can be included in our next report. I think that our parents are an incredible piece to the success of the learning that takes place at JEH. And we don't have those indicators in K through 8, but we do have it through the Head Start program. And so I'd be interested to see what we could do with those indicators, and also celebrating our parents and encouraging the success that's supposed to be that's supposed to be hand in hand with the education of our Head Start kids and their parents. So I think it would be great to see that that information in the next presentation. And I'm excited about the work that we're doing with Evanston Public Library. I know that they've been our longtime partners, but we have several of our families that are registered already, both for the Spanish and the English session. So that's definitely something to celebrate. I do the language and the math portion, and this is why I bring up the parent engagement, because our parents are the ones that are teaching our children their language, as well as reinforcing what's learned in the classroom. And I think that something that I pointed out in the fall is the decrease to the Spanish language being spoken at home. So in Evanston, we have a long history of Latino families living in this community, 4 or 5 generations now of families. And so the prevalence of families that are solely speaking Spanish in the homes, that number, that's decreasing. And so I'm curious if that could potentially have an impact on the scores that we're seeing tonight. I do know that some of the tests are solely given in in the language. In Spanish, for example, when children might be more proficient in English. And I think that's up to us to find a creative way. While we can't do it because of our granting limitations, we are a two-way immersion district. So whatever, creative, roundabouts that we can do to not only support the entering into the two-way immersion program that many of our early learners are going to step into, but I think also, again, that parent component is so important because they're the ones that are going to be supporting and reinforcing what's being taught in the classroom. So I just wanted to point that out. I know it's something that again, you are working on. And then finally, the connection with the Doorway to Learning. It's not just the Doorway to Learning that we have at JEH, but we also have a delegate that happens to be in our 5th ward. And we didn't really get a lot of information tonight, and I know that it wasn't part of the data that you collected, but I think as much collaboration that we can have with our early childhood educators, again, because they're the ones that are communicating with families, with parents. So I think the more cohesion we can have around the training of our educators, so depending on the ones that are going to come from our early childhood programs, that it could be a seamless transition once they come into our Head Start or a School for All and all the programs that we have at JEH. So they're more just comments, and again, an immense amount of gratitude for the work that you and your team are doing.
Well, thank you so much. And I can speak to a couple of things. First of all, I do think that you bring up a very good point about the fact that some students, who end up in the Spanish classrooms, actually they're at home, they're speaking a little more English, and how we tease through that. The other thing that we want to examine in this data that we haven't had a chance to fully look at is, we also have students who are from Spanish-speaking homes whose families opt not to put them in. They sign the waiver, they want them immersed in an English classroom. So those students also are included in that bilingual data as well. And so we do want to, that was one of the things that the bilingual team asked that we try to break down further, and we're going to try to do in upcoming weeks, is really taking a look at the students who are predominantly Spanish speaking, who are in the English speaking classes, how they're doing, as opposed to the ones who are predominantly Spanish speaking in the Spanish speaking classrooms. And then, as you pointed out, sometimes there are students who really are a little more proficient in English. And the teachers who are in a Spanish speaking classroom, the teachers do have the option, if they know that the student is stronger in English and they just feel like they're not getting accurate results when they're probing with Spanish probes, that they might switch to an English probe to collect that on that student, so that they can compare and look and use that to inform their instruction as well. So teachers do, because all of the materials are available in English and Spanish, they do have that option. It's not true for students who speak other languages, but at least for English and Spanish, we can do that. But we are trying to do a deeper analysis about the students who are, regarding the students who are not being taught in language one, right? Who are in the English speaking classrooms, to see what we can learn from that and how they're doing on some of these tests as well, these sub skills as well. And then in terms of the families, yeah, I think we do have that data. I think I didn't focus heavily on it, like we take attendance at all of the family events. This year, of course, they've been lower, but they're still attended, and we're still providing all the opportunities. But that does exist. The Head Start is only one of our programs, but our family engagement specialists try to collect the data on all families who attend events. And in terms of Infant Welfare Society, so I don't oversee that program. That's a separate program. They are a grantee, a partner with the grant, but I don't oversee it. So I do have contact with them as a collegial through the Evanston Early Childhood Council, but I don't oversee their instruction or their data assessment. I mean, Katrina Jones may be able to, who is our grant manager, may be able to provide some of that information for the board if you're interested in seeing that.
All right. So I think that everyone has had the chance to contribute. When we have the opportunity or when the occasion arises to talk again about our early childhood outcomes, I think it will be useful to include any information or feedback or outcomes about transitions and how we are working collaboratively between early childhood and school buildings to transition children and families and share information, and particularly how children transition in the fall of 21, I think is of interest. And those longitudinal updates would be much appreciated. Sounds like Sharon and Kylie, I would like to dig into that too. Think getting some updates about those data points that were outliers for Latinx students. And yeah, learning more about any opportunities that may have arisen to have bilingual Latinx leadership. And including the parent engagement data would be really interesting. And I think in particular, when we were on that early childhood task force, one of the things that was notable was that we had family programming in Preschool for All, family programming, and the Family Center, and family programming in like the Welcoming Center. Like we had several different pockets of family programming happening. So I'd be curious to also hear about how we are being strategic about offering programs to folks in places where it's accessible, and how it's meeting, strategically meeting families' needs, given that those programs are all in one building. It would be helpful to streamline it for families. So thank you so much, Sharon, for taking the time tonight, and for Kylie for helping to pull together all that data. And yeah, we are proud of you all. Keep up the good and deliberate and thoughtful work.
Sharon did all the work. Sharon did all the heavy lifting. It's really her. Kudos to her and her team.
Thank you. They have worked hard.
High five to them. High five to Alia. All right. Well, with no further business before this board, I am going to adjourn this meeting at 9:28. Thank you all. Have a lovely evening.